Hello, thanks for tuning in tonight to Answers for the Paranormal. We're glad that you have, and we welcome you on a Sunday evening, April the 7th, 2019. We are Answers for the Paranormal. My name is Bill Posey, and I'm your host for the broadcast tonight. And on the line with me from his office over in Horsham is my co-host, Joe Marodi. Hey, Joe. How's it going, Joe?
Good evening, brother. It's going okay. It's been a stressful day for me, but we all have to go through those. And here we are at 7:30, ready finally to get to part 5, the end of Shadows and Strings, the Manipulation of the Masses series that we've been. When did we start this, Bill? Back in what, February, was it, or was it March?
No, I think you're right. It was sometime in February.
Okay, so we didn't intend it to go on this long, but there's, every time we got a show together, some other stuff would pop up, and in preparation, I would feel that it was necessary to add more information. So we've gotten to the point where now this is part 5, and that's fine. But we are definitely going to end it tonight. Got a lot of stuff to go through tonight, but we've decided that we're going to close it out, and then we're going to head in a new direction next time.
Yeah, I think that it's been a series, Joe, that is necessary. I think it's good that we do comment on what's going on in the world. There's so much coming at us, and as you indicated, that because of that, we needed to bring more material into this series and analyze it and talk about it. And so, I think that it's been good, and I'm glad that we've done it, and we certainly will do broadcasts similar to this in the future.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whenever something presents itself that we need to address, and we'll do that. So, folks, stay tuned for that. Again, as Joe indicated, we titled the show tonight "From Shadows to Strings: The Manipulation of the Masses." Epilogue. This is the last of the of this series, part 5. So, with that, Joe, I'm going to give out our contact information. We are, again, Answers for the Paranormal, and our web address, www.answersfortheparanormal.org. Our Facebook page, Answers for the Paranormal. We're also on YouTube. You can check us out there, Answers for the Paranormal. And recently we've been added onto Spotify. So if you have Spotify podcasting on your smartphones or on your desktops, you can listen to us on Spotify. So, Joe, we're expanding, trying to get out there. As I told you, I've been tinkering around with some video. And hopefully, in the not too distant future, we'll be simulcasting both on Spreaker and live on YouTube. So, some exciting things in the works.
Well, I'll tell you, Bill, I give you the thanks for that, because you're the master of all that stuff, the technology. I would be lost without you, brother, and I'm very thankful for your abilities and your producing all of these programs and getting all the technology in order, because that ain't my cup of tea, as they say. So my cup of tea is I can't ignore the things that I see on television when I turn on the news. It's how I wake up. I wake up, my alarm goes off, and to help me wake up, I turn the TV on and I toggle back and forth between a couple different networks, and I see what's being said out there. And I have a little notebook that I write notes in. So, that's, as you said a few moments ago, Bill, there are things going on in this country, in this world, but I think that tonight we're going to focus on what's going on in this country, stories that are stories that have hit the headlines, but may not be, earth-shattering. But I think that they need to be looked at and scrutinized and examined as we have been doing, because we believe that they do fit into a grand scheme of how the manipulators, capital M, we call them the Illuminati, call them shadow government, those that are pulling the strings from wherever they are. There's definitely an agenda in place, and they definitely want to see people at each other's throats. They've always been successful at it, and they are getting even better at it, and things are getting worse. And we're going to just take a look at some of the stories that are demonstrating that agenda that's in place tonight.
Yeah, looking forward to it. All right, Joe, so from here, throughout this series, we've kind of opened up each of our broadcasts talking about chemtrails. And so any updates that you have on your end, Joe?
Yeah. It's interesting. I was speaking with a customer of mine a couple weeks ago, and we had been out getting some materials, and I said to this individual, I said, "What do you think that is?" He said, "Well, I don't know. It was I know it was a chemtrail." I said, he admitted that it was strange, and I told him, I won't go into the whole discussion that we had, but I gave him my thoughts on what chemtrails are, and he listened, and I came back a few days later, and he said that he had been doing some research on what we had been talking about, and he'd been looking at some stuff on the internet. And I said, "Don't tell me you think that they're contrails."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, yeah. I mean, that's what it seems." And I said, I wasn't going to get into a big whole argument with him, being that he's a customer.
Yeah.
My point in relating that story is that how easy it is to get people to see things one way when obviously your eyes are telling you something else. Normal planes don't fly at a 45-degree angle, and I've seen them at 90-degree angles going straight up and then looping back down. And to me, that just demonstrates how easy it is for people to their minds to be shaped to get them to believe that what they're seeing is normal, and that they're just vapor trails from normal planes. Well, those do exist. I mean, you can see them, but they are not what we are referring to as chemtrails. And then the other thing that I was thinking of, and I was thinking of this today, Bill, is that how often it is that, and this is really something that needs to be thought about deeply. Mm-hmm. How many times I've woken up and I've seen a clear blue sky, and I think to myself, okay, how long is it going to be before they start spraying? And, I'll start seeing as I take my dog for a walk, and sure enough, there they are, and there's another one, and before you know it, look, the other morning I went out, this was on the way to work, and they were actually almost like a sunburst formation, like coming from a point in the middle and then fanning out up into wherever. And how often it is that you start a day off with a clear blue sky, and after they're done spraying, you got clouds, and none of those clouds are natural clouds.
No.
To me, that's a tremendous concern. And I'm thinking about all the things that people are going through in this life when it comes to diseases. I'm thinking about Alzheimer's. I'm thinking about how perhaps what they are spraying is contributing to the incredible. Bill, are you there?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I heard a beep. I'm sorry. How chemtrails may be contributing to the sharp increase in the people with Alzheimer's related, memory problems. Mm-hmm. And it's the bottom line for me is I want to know what's being sprayed. I want to know exactly what's being sprayed, and I want to hear it from an official agency. I want to know who's doing it. I want to know what's being sprayed. I want to know why it's being sprayed, and on whose authority it's being sprayed. Those are the 4 questions I've been asking for a long time, and no official wants to answer it.
Mm-hmm.
But until then, I'm thinking about all the people getting cancer, all the people getting mental disorders like Asperger's and what's the other one? Asperger's. What's the other one related to Asperger's? Oh boy,
I can't think of it at the moment.
Yeah, well, we might be breathing in those chemtrails too much, Bill.
Yeah.
So, look, I don't want to make light of it because I really do believe that there's something sinister going on.
Yeah.
There's something devious, insidious that's going on. There's nothing good that's going to come out of them spraying. So, look, we hate to keep beating this dead horse. Well, in actuality, it's not a dead horse. It's something that needs to be discussed, and we're gonna stay on this. You know, when we do our broadcasts, when it's just you and I, Bill, and we don't have a guest, we're going to spend some time at the beginning of each and see if there's any updates. I've got some ideas about how I can make this more of an issue. It might get me in trouble. I don't know, but we'll see. But I refuse to just accept. Oh, there's another one. You know, me and my wife kind of do that. Oh, she points. Oh, there's one being made there, and there's another one. And look, I don't want 25 years down the road people to be bemoaning. Oh, why didn't anybody say anything when they were spraying these things at first? Yeah. Well, people are saying these things. They are saying them. Fortunately, there are people that are relegated to certain corners of the internet. You know, you're not going to see it on you're not going to see it on Fox. You're not going to see it on One American News. You know, the ones that are considered quote unquote conservative networks, you're not going to see it on there. You're only going to hear it from people like you and I and others like us who are concerned and want some official answers. And they haven't been forthcoming, but we're going to keep going.
Yeah. Well, you know, Joe, I found it interesting. I was reading an article the other day, and there are a couple people. One person on YouTube who calls himself the Planet X News, and of course people label him a nut, right?
Right.
But he claims that he has documents from the U.S. Patent Office which proves that jets are spraying the skies. So he came out with that YouTube, and lo and behold,
it was taken down.
No, better yet, 2 other people picked it up and looked into it a little further. One of them was a professor, believe it or not, from Irvine, Stephen Davis of UC Irvine. And he co-authored a study around it, and he claims that he has PDF files, all different proofs that tie this to HAARP, which is the government program to manipulate weather.
Right.
And so in the study that he co-authored, he said that he wanted to establish a scientific record on the topic of secret atmospheric spraying programs. So stay tuned, Joe. It's starting to unravel a little bit around these people. And I think as more and more people become aware and it's brought into mainstream and not just onto the internet, that maybe you'll get your answers.
Yeah, boy, I really do hope so, Bill. I understand that people in official positions at universities, scientific agencies, the term is being a whistleblower.
Right.
And I know that when they start to investigate and look into these allegations or these suspicions of what's being sprayed, they know there's going to be pushback. And I know that it's very easy when that pushback hits to start drawing back and saying, is this really worth my job? Like with Jim Tracy at Florida Atlantic University,
right,
when he questioned the narrative of Sandy Hook, it didn't take them long to get him out of Florida Atlantic University.
No.
So people in official positions know that if you challenge what's going on, the higher ups who are ordaining these programs or initiating these programs, they're going to see that you get silenced, however that needs to be done. So credit to this professor at UCal Irvine, and hopefully his courage will be picked up by others, and it'll become so big that it won't be able to be squashed. So
yeah.
All I know, Bill, is you can't just do nothing, because they continue to spray. They continue to spray, and it's getting worse and worse.
It sure is.
Yeah.
All right, Joe. So I guess time for us to get into the news, right?
Yeah. Let's get into the news, Bill. Did you ever? No. Of course you did. You've heard of the old saying, it's more of an old time saying, what is this world coming to? People still say it, but I
think I said it today.
What's that?
I think I said it today.
Well, if you did, then you're mimicking the old timers from one that's older than that, Bill. This world's going to hell in a handbasket.
Oh yeah.
Now, I could never quite figure out what that meant. Like, what's the metaphor? What's the handbasket? I don't know.
Right.
But I do know that I knew what they were saying, right? Well, I don't think that what this world is coming to, I don't think that's the question that should be asked, or the world is going to hell in a handbasket. I think we've kind of arrived at what this world is coming to. And I understand from the scriptures that we're going to get way, way worse than where we are today.
Mm.
But we are definitely seeing a rise in evil, and a love of evil, and a hatred for good in fulfillment of the biblical prophecies. We are definitely seeing that on the rise in our current times. It can't be ignored. I don't believe the quote-unquote church is raising their voice enough. They have been silenced. So it's left to people yelling and screaming and doing a war dance on shows like yours and ours, yours and mine, to bring these issues to light, for others, for their own scrutiny. Because I don't know how many other people are geared like you and I are to watch what is going on in the world. I think that most people, Bill, are very resigned to what goes on in the world. They have a job,
mm-hmm.
they have a family, they have leisures that they involve themselves in, and they have a routine of life, and they really don't want that routine to be upset. They want to continue to live life as they know it, and they're just hoping that people in charge are taking care of things, and they're not really paying attention. That's how things get by on people, because the people that actually make the differences in this life know that people are lazy, and they don't want to get involved, and they don't want to they would rather just go with the flow. It's the easiest thing to do, and I'll be honest with you, there are times when I think to myself, what am I doing? You know what, I just want to take a week off, a month off. I don't want to think about any of these things. I don't want to hear about what's going on out there. I just want to live. But you know what? I think the Lord has called us to this ministry, Bill, and it involves suffering. It really does. It involves sacrifice, and it involves constant barrage of attacks from the enemy, and that those attacks manifest themselves in different ways. Mm-hmm. So this is why we're doing what we're doing. So with that being said, Bill, I mentioned the biblical prophecies that are coming to light in our present time. So I would like you to read one of them. And it's not very long, and it's from the second chapter of Paul's letter to Timothy in chapter 3, the second epistle in chapter 3. So, Bill, would you read that, verses 1 through 5?
Sure. This is 2 Timothy chapter 3, and I'll be reading from the Authorized Version, King James. So 2 Timothy 3 says this, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away." And that's 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5.
Now, excuse me, Paul paints a very dark picture of where humanity will be in the last days. Excuse me. And I believe that we are in the last times. Since Christ rose from the dead, since he gave his life, we have been in the last times, and we are getting close to the end, in my opinion, with the world going the way that it is. And I think that, as I said earlier, the things that you see that are going on in this world, where good is called evil and evil is called good, is definitely a fulfillment of this prophecy from Paul. And we can see how humanity itself is changing. People are becoming more selfish. They're becoming more prideful. They're definitely lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. So this is what we are trying to bring out when we produce these programs. And the only hope really is a personal relationship with the Creator, the Lord and Savior Jesus, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He is the only answer to all of this. But these are the sort of things that need to be talked about as we go forward. And I think that we've been doing since 2010, Bill. There's a lot of deceptions out there, and the fact that people are in the state that they are in, the state of ungodliness, makes them so very susceptible to the schemes of the manipulators who we have been talking about. So, unless you have any response to that, Bill, I will go on to my first in the news bit.
Yeah, I really don't have anything to add to what you commented on, because I think that you did a great job in doing that, and I think that passage of Scripture, if it doesn't speak to today, then you're not paying attention to the world around us. So,
right.
That would be my only comment.
Yeah, there's no question about that, Bill. All right, now, things that have been in the news that I think that this first story that many people will probably have heard of, and I don't know how much thought they've given to it, but I, unfortunately, give a lot of thought. I mean, Bill, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I think about these stories, melatonin doesn't always get you all the way through the night, unfortunately. It's not a good thing. I want to talk about, I don't know, how many people know who Alyssa Milano is?
Oh, yeah.
Alyssa Milano was, I think she began her career, she didn't begin her first major role was as the daughter of what's his name? Tony Danza. On Who's the Boss?
Mm-hmm.
A sitcom from back in the '80s where she played Tony Danza's daughter.
Yeah.
On the show, he was a live-in, I think, like a housekeeper or something like that. But anyway, Alyssa Milano was his daughter in that show, and she went on to, I think, her next big role, as far as I know, was in a series called Charmed. I believe that she was in that. She actually played a witch in the series Charmed, which I think was a very popular series. I mean, I was always hearing references to it. I think it was mostly popular in the 2000s, something like that. I'm not a big TV guy, so
that sounds great.
Yeah, it's my understanding is very vague, but I know that she was in that series. So, Alyssa Milano, I'll just read this article. Alyssa Milano shared a letter signed by 50 prominent Hollywood celebrities threatening to boycott filming in the state of Georgia over a new abortion bill that's poised to become law. Now, I haven't heard if that became law. It's known as the Heartbeat Bill. Do you know if that has become law or not, Bill? Bill, are you there? Hello, Bill. I hear something. I just don't hear speaking. Bill, are you there? Well, as we get into the news, we were already attacked by the enemy. Oh, Lord, I hope that you clear this up so we can get through this program tonight. We're already pressed for time, so it would be very nice if we could continue right along here, as they say in the radio business. Bill, you there? Hello, Bill. I hear some very, very strange noises, folks. If you can hear me, this is par for the course. Let's see what's going on over here. Maybe Bill can call me back. According to my phone, the program is still going. I am going to hang up, and hopefully Bill will call me back. If you can hear me, Bill, I'm going to hang up now. You can call me back. Bill, can you hear me?
Joe, you there?
I'm here. You have any idea what happened?
Oh, somehow we cut out.
Did you hear me talking when I couldn't hear you?
I heard you talking, yeah, and I was answering you, but...
I did not hear you. Are we on right now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right. We apologize for that, folks. Don't quite know what's going on unless it's the usual evil opposition that we face every time we do these programs. But here we go. So my question to you, Bill, was do you know if that abortion law in Georgia was passed? It became law or not?
I don't believe it has been.
Okay, so I know that the governor, Kemp, was going to sign that. But anyway, Alyssa Milano threatened the state of Georgia, and she wrote a letter. 50 prominent Hollywood celebrities. Now, prominent is a real stretch when you look at the list. If you want to call Alyssa Milano a prominent actress, I mean, you're really stretching it there.
Yeah.
I would suspect there were many more so prominent who decided for whatever reason to not sign the letter. But anyway, the Star called on the film and TV industry to stop giving the state its business due to the new quote-unquote heartbeat bill that the Georgia Senate passed earlier this month. The bill seeks to limit abortions to 6 weeks after conception unless the pregnancy was conceived through rape or incest. Milano is sharing the letter she sent to both Georgia Governor Brian Kemp as well as Georgia House Speaker David Ralston Thursday morning that threatens the state with the loss of quote-unquote billions of dollars if the bill titled HB, House Bill 481, becomes law. Okay, here's the letter that she wrote. I'm assuming that it's... Oh, no, it's not the entire... I'll get through the entire letter, but here's part of it. And it's not long. As actors, our work often brings us to Georgia. We've always found your state to be populated with friendly and caring people, the letter begins. We've been glad to bring millions of dollars in revenue to support Georgia's schools, parks, and communities, but we cannot, in good conscience, continue to recommend our industry remain in Georgia if House Bill 481 becomes law. Now, my comment to that is, does Alyssa Milano actually believe what she's written here? Does she think Georgia's economic health is based on how Hollywood treats them?
Yeah, I think she actually does believe that.
I guess you. I mean, that's debatable. I guess she probably does believe it. So that should give you a clear indication, Bill, of how prideful these flunkies are to believe that they are that necessary. Mm-hmm. That they can threaten the legislative process and believe that their threats carry any real weight. The Star elaborates on her and her fellow stars' specific issue with the bill. All right, here's the continuation of the letter. This dangerous and deeply flawed bill, and this is the worst part, though. This dangerous and deeply flawed bill mimics many others which have already been deemed unconstitutional. As men who identify as small government conservatives, we remind you that government is never bigger than when it's inside a woman's body or in her doctor's office. Huh? This bill would remove the possibility of women receiving reproductive health care before most even know they are pregnant, and force many women to undergo unregulated, hidden procedures at great risk to their health. Now, let me comment on that part of the, and so certainly you're welcome to, Bill, to comment as well. When she says that government is never bigger than when it is inside a woman's body or in her doctor's office. Well, no. Actually, this is one area in which they themselves, government, because government is God instituted as God's servants, when they are responsible to protect human life from evil.
Amen.
This bill would remove the possibility of women receiving reproductive health care before most even know they are pregnant. Oh, so you, Alyssa Milano, you call it quote-unquote reproductive health care. In actuality, you are deciding to end the life of a human being who is in the tragic position of being in his or her first moments, days, weeks of life. Mm-hmm. She goes on to say, it will force many women to undergo unregulated hidden procedures at great risk to their health. Actually, no, you are choosing to get what has become to be known as back alley abortions. You are not being forced. And the only risk is to your own life. Because tragically, the human being inside of you is at no risk at all, because he or she has no say in whether they live or die. Mm-hmm. And then she says, we can't imagine being elected officials who had to say to their constituents, I enacted a law that was so evil it chased billions of dollars out of our state's economy. So, Bill, this witch calls this law so evil it chased billions of dollars out of our state's economy. Mm-hmm. She calls it evil, so evil. To protect human life, that's evil? This witch values dollars above human life? A beating heart means nothing to this witch. And I ain't going to hold back on my use of words, Bill. This woman played a witch on the show. She's behaving like a witch here.
Yep.
She's living the life of a witch. I'll continue with the article. There isn't much more here. Georgia's current law allows abortions to be performed up to 20 weeks into the pregnancy. The bill will allow rape and incest victims to have an abortion up to 20 weeks, but require them to file an official police report. The bill will head back to the Georgia House of Representatives to have it approved. The state Senate affirmed Georgia's commitment to life and the rights of the innocent unborn, Kemp said in a statement last week. That's Brian Kemp, Georgia's governor. Now, Bill, although the bill doesn't go far enough for me, because life begins at conception, period, mm-hmm. I do applaud this governor's resolve here.
Yes.
The article goes on to say this. Milano previously slammed the state as quote-unquote totally corrupt after Kemp won the gubernatorial election over Democratic candidate Stacey Abrams. There are over 20 productions shooting in Georgia, she tweeted. Is the entertainment industry willing to support the economy of a totally corrupt state that suppresses democracy, where the winner isn't the best choice for the people, but the best schemer or crook? Now, obviously, Alyssa Milano doesn't understand simple math, I suppose. What she's referring to is that there was a runoff. Mm-hmm. Official certified results from the contentious race showed Republican Brian Kemp narrowly avoided facing a runoff against Democrat Stacey Abrams. Official results from the Georgia Secretary of State's office say that Kemp defeated Abrams by 54,723 votes out of more than 3.9 million ballots cast. Kemp had to get more than 50% of the vote to avoid a runoff against Abrams. Official results show he garnered 50.22% of the vote. And the last time I checked, Bill, although I spent all of my time in algebra and math class out in the hallway because I was a dunce, 50.22, I do know, is more than 50. So that's how the Brian Kemp avoided a runoff against Stacey Abrams and legitimately won the gubernatorial race in Georgia, which Alyssa Milano calls corrupt. Mm-hmm. But I can guarantee you if Stacey Abrams had won, she would have been very, very happy with that. So that's the state of affairs with Hollywood and Georgia. And unless you have anything to add to that, Bill, I'll move right along.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, Joe, is this is typical of Hollywood to push their weight around like they are something or somebody, to actually dictate policy above the Constitution and voters who make their mind up in a ballot box and support a certain candidate. Now, I've been waiting, I don't know, almost 3 years now, Joe, or a little over 3 years, for all these Hollywood elites who threatened to leave the country because Donald Trump was elected president. And I don't believe not one of them have left yet.
Unfortunately, no.
So I want to know, why not? Why haven't you left? Obviously, this country is that corrupt that a person such as Donald Trump could be elected president. So wouldn't you leave? Or is the fact that you make millions of dollars to play act
Right.
more important to you? And so don't give me this, take the high ground here and say that you're actually, concerned about Georgia's state of economy. Give me a break.
Yeah, right.
What a joke. So Alyssa Milano and that group that signed on with her, please just leave.
Yeah,
Just leave.
You want to hear the group? This is part of the group. There were 50 of them, but here's some of them. Alec Baldwin, and he's been relegated to, his career's over. He's been relegated to playing Donald Trump. If it wasn't for Donald Trump, Alec Baldwin wouldn't exist anymore because he plays him on Saturday Night Live every Saturday.
Yeah.
So Alec Baldwin should thank Donald Trump because he wouldn't. His career would be over. Colin Hanks, I don't know if he's related to Tom Hanks or Deborah Messing. I kind of know these names, but Patton Oswalt, never heard. Rosie O'Donnell. Bill, you really want Rosie O'Donnell to leave this country? I don't. Where would America be without Rosie O'Donnell?
Yeah.
Sean Penn, Amy Schumer, Michael Sheen, Sarah Silverman, Ben Stiller, Amber Tamblyn, and Will Wheaton. Most of them I've never heard of. So when they say prominent, 50 prominent Hollywood celebrities, okay, you think that's prominent? Yeah, okay. Well, that being what it is, Bill, let's move right along and leave Georgia and Hollywood behind. But we will keep an eye on that when Brian Kemp signs that, hopefully, into law. At least it's a start. Now let's look for some more things that are signs of our time. Everybody's familiar with National Public Radio, NPR. They're in this market in Philadelphia, in southeastern Pennsylvania, where Bill and I are. We have the National Public Radio affiliate in this area, which is WHYY. Every spring and every fall, they hold fundraising programming. I think it goes on for 2 weeks, where they tell you how you really need to contribute because this is part of your life, and government is cutting funding to NPR, to public radio, so people have to start giving. So they do these fundraisers every spring and fall, and something that caught my ear as I was listening about 2 weeks ago. A giveaway. What they do is they have it. If you donate a certain amount per month, they'll give you a thank you gift. One of these thank you gifts were what they call Philly tarot cards. And this is a tweet from a Katie Culinary, who is actually part of WHYY. She tweeted this on March 27th, this past March. Philly tarot cards, ... What will they think up next? Yours for a $20 a month pledge to @WHYY. So they're getting into the New Age and the occult, Bill. I guess I shouldn't say getting into, but they're becoming more bold about them. They're not going to worry about hiding the fact that everybody knows what tarot cards are. They involve mysticism, and they involve the occult, and they involve using spiritual influences to have these cards read to you by a tarot card reader, which will give you information about your future. That's called divination. And it's completely against the scriptures in Deuteronomy. You can find that in Deuteronomy chapter 18. Divination is one of the detestable practices of the pagans that Jews were to keep away from and not get involved with, because those practices were detestable to God. And that's a strong word, detestable. And so tarot cards fall under the heading of divination, because you're looking for spiritual guidance to tell people their futures. And so WHYY is getting into the fortune-telling business. And these cards, they're called Philly Tarot cards, and they had them on their website, Bill, and they had the cards that if a tarot card reader flips one over and they say, oh, you shouldn't do this, oh, you should buy that, oh, don't do this. They have images of Philadelphia, like you'll have City Hall. They even had the Philly Fanatic on one. They'll have the Art Museum on another. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is that they're tarot cards. And so, folks, that's where we are. That's where we have been heading. That's where we've arrived. And, folks, it's going to get a lot worse. It's going to get a lot worse.
Yes, it is.
So let's move right along. Big story that was in the news recently that most people heard about. The cutting of the funding for the Special Olympics, but then Donald Trump backed off. Here are some highlights from a website called The Hill. I just want to read. This is an article about how Betsy DeVos was grilled, the Secretary of Education. DeVos went before appropriators to defend the administration's proposal to slash $8.5 billion or 12% from the education budget. It eliminates 30 programs. It significantly reduces funding for several others. Senator Roy Blunt, chairman of the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee that covers education. There are programs here that are unlikely to be eliminated in any final budget. And then it says this: your budget request fails to invest in our youngest learners, our students in public schools, she said. It fails to help, this is from Patty Murray. It fails to help students who are struggling to better themselves in higher education. And it fails student loan borrowers who are saddled with debt. Now, this woman, this Patty Murray, she said it fails to invest in our younger learners. They are struggling to better themselves in higher education. Now, to me, that's a bourgeois statement.
Mm-hmm.
The only way you can better yourself is through higher education. And it's not my responsibility to help those who are saddled with debt as far as student loan. Mm-hmm. The government shouldn't be in the school loan industry anyway.
That's right.
So that's not my job as a taxpayer to get you out of a student loan debt. Appropriators seized on the $18 million, you catch that, Bill, $18 million cut for the Special Olympics, the world's largest sporting event for adults with disabilities. Trump has proposed cutting funding to it in each of his 3 annual budget proposals. And I say, yeah, this should be cut because it's not my responsibility to fund the Special Olympics. And I'll tell you why before I end this article. Now, here's a portion of this bill that I want people to really pay close attention to. And I want to give Betsy DeVos a lot of credit for this. She says, I have given a portion of my salary to Special Olympics. Now listen to this. I hope all of this debate inspires private contributions to Special Olympics, DeVos said, arguing that the program could make up the government shortfall through charitable donations. Hello? That's talking about private funding for the Special Olympics. Very few will have heard what DeVos stated here, Bill. Very few.
Right.
The spectacle set off waves of negative headlines and reactions, including from the Special Olympics chairman and ESPN personalities. ESPN personalities weren't happy. Well, you know what? Just get in touch with the multi-millionaires that you know and ask them to get cracking on making up the shortfall. ESPN personalities. I couldn't care less whether it bothers you or not. Trump's fiscal 2020 budget plan calls for slashing domestic spending by as much as 9%, with many of the cuts targeted at key programs. It suggested shaving a third off the Environmental Protection Agency. And I'm all for that because the EPA doesn't give a damn about what's being sprayed from chemtrails. Mm-hmm. Now, if that doesn't fall under their heading, what does?
Yep.
Why would anyone in the world want to cut National Science Foundation funding, given that its funding drives our economy? And that is from Matt. What's his name here? I'll get his name in a second. He's a representative. He's talking about the National Science Foundation funding that drives our economy. It doesn't drive our economy. The National Science Foundation does not drive our economy. And it enhances our national security, he says.
Wow.
Our national security is not based on a budget. Democrats fumed over the... that bothers me. I can't find who said that. Well, I shouldn't spend too much time trying to find it. It's some one of these flunkies. Democrats fumed over the proposed elimination of entitlements entities like the National Endowment for the Arts and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Well, you know what I say to that? I clap. I clap about that. It's not my responsibility to fund the National Endowment for the Arts or to support Big Bird and Elmo. Go ask Mark Zuckerberg. Mm-hmm. Go ask Bill Gates. Go ask them to keep Big Bird and Elmo going. House Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Nita Lowey called Trump's spending proposal devastating, quote-unquote, and pointed to, quote-unquote, deep cuts in investments and clean energy, mental health services, after-school programs, and much more. Again, let the clean energy companies and the mental health services find their own private funding. But when reporters asked Trump about the proposed cuts, he distanced himself from the matter. 2 days after DeVos's initial testimony and after her second congressional hearing. Well, I really don't care what Donald Trump thinks about that. I really don't. It's not my job to fund these types of programs. It's not my job. Mm-hmm. People have to understand, Bill, that when you fund, and this, you know, I'm not even going to, we don't have the time for me to go into how the Special Olympics started with private funding from Eunice Kennedy Shriver. Camp Shriver became an annual event, and the Kennedy Foundation gave grants to universities, recreation departments, and community centers to hold similar camps. And it wasn't, Bill, until 2004 when George W. Bush signed into law the Special Olympic Sport and Empowerment Act. The bill authorized funding for its healthy athletes education and worldwide expansion programs. This thing went worldwide. That started in a camp in one of the Kennedys' compounds up in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. It started with private funding, and that's the way it should have been. You know why, Bill? Because of all these programs, the National Endowments for the Arts, National Public Radio. You hear any conservative voices on any of those outlets?
No.
Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. You know what he's worth, Bill? Take a guess.
Now keep in mind, they're crying about $18 million that was cut. Now we just gave a baseball player $430 million. The Washington or the Anaheim Angels gave Mike Trout a $430 million contract for 13 years. And all they're crying about is an $18 million cut in Special Olympic funding. Jeff Bezos, Bill, is worth $112 billion. This is as of 2018. This is from Forbes magazine. Jeff Bezos, $112 billion. Let him give a little bit to empower the arts for National Public Radio. How about Bill Gates? You hear about Bill Gates all the time on National Public Radio.
Yep.
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Well, he's worth $90 billion. Again, that's of last year. Warren Buffett, $84 billion. Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, $71 billion. Michael Bloomberg of Bloomberg Associates, $50 billion. The Walton family, Jim Walton, $46.4 billion. S. Robson Walton, $46.2 billion. Alice Walton, $46 billion. And I could go on and on and on, Bill. You see what happens when government starts funding these programs, and that goes way back when it started. When they start funding them, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and more tax dollars are spent on these programs. When charitable donations could be given to fund these with no problem whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But when people understand that government is the first entity that people think of when it comes to meeting a financial need, it eliminates them thinking about private philanthropy. So all of these things could be taken care of through private funding and not going into my pocket because I might disagree with it. Now, if Zuckerberg wants to give money to something, obviously he agrees with it. I'll give money to things that I agree with. Don't decide where my money should go. The Constitution spells out where our tax dollars should be confined to. Mm-hmm. Well, unless you have anything to add to that, Bill, I'll move on. I apologize for yelling, but I get very emotional.
Okay, let's move on.
All right. Now, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but there is a double standard as far as the mainstream media is concerned, and everyday life with everyday citizens when it comes to Islam and Christianity. Mm-hmm. When people, how many times a day, Bill, whether it's personally at work or out and about or on television or on radio, do you hear the name of Jesus Christ being taken in vain?
Oh my goodness. I wouldn't be able to put a number on it. It's so many you would lose count.
Okay. Now, that's bad enough. You know, when something doesn't go right for someone, what do? They take the name of Jesus Christ in vain. They don't shout out Muhammad's name. They don't shout out Buddha. They don't shout out anything as far as the Hindu religion. They don't shout out Allah. No, they take the name of the creators in vain. Recently, Bill, there was a Daily News headline, and I tried to procure that headline. I could not find it. I know that I saw it because it floored me when I saw it. The headline read, "For crisis' sake." Mm-hmm. The story was regarding the opioid crisis. They used a prevailing issue, the opioid crisis, the alleged opioid crisis, to perform an end run around a headline that blaspheme the Creator of the world, the Lord Jesus Christ. They knowingly substituted as a headline the often stated and blasphemous phrase, "for Christ's sake," and instead they placed, "for Christ's sake." Now, I don't know how many people that bothered, but it really, really bothered me. And no one in today's Christianity that I'm aware of, nowhere was there an outcry. None. Now, I challenge someone, anyone, to find me a daily news headline, any headline that even hints at disparaging Islam, Allah, or its prophet Muhammad. So what does this tell you? It tells me that in the MSN, the mainstream media, you can mock the Creator of the world, the God of the Jews and the God of Christians, but you cannot say a thing that could possibly be misconstrued as defaming Islam. And let me also bring this to light, Bill. A clear insult and mocking of CNN's Don Lemon, who has a show on every night, every weeknight at 10 o'clock on CNN. Lemon took the name of Jesus Christ in vain in responding to something that Donald Trump said. I say, hey, Don Lemon, why don't you take the name of Allah or Muhammad in vain instead of Jesus Christ? Or are you afraid that if you do, there will be a price on your head? You damn coward. So that's my bringing to light the double standard, and I'm sure that I'm not the first one to bring that up, but that's what is going on in today's world, Bill. Now, unless you have anything to add, I'll move right along.
Okay.
You ever hear the name Sonia Jones, Bill?
No, I'm not familiar with that name.
Okay. I'm not surprised. I'm going to read a quick article here. And then we're going to get, this is the last in the news before we get to our main topic. I think this is all falls under the main topic, but anyway. Representative Bradley Byrne says the illegal alien accused of killing school teacher Sonia Jones of Mobile, Alabama in a head-on hit-and-run car crash gamed the United States asylum system and took advantage of the catch and release program, catch and release policy. And this is as of March 23rd, this past March 23rd. Jones, a 49-year-old mother of two and teacher at Mobile's Living Word Christian Center Kingdom Academy, was killed by 16-year-old illegal alien Domingo Francisco Marcos from Guatemala in a head-on hit-and-run collision on March 18th, police say. In an exclusive interview with Sirius XM Patriots Breitbart News Saturday, Byrne detailed how Marcos used the country's weak asylum process and catch and release policy, where border crossers are caught and released into the interior of the country to stay in the United States. Now, this is Representative Bradley Byrne, Republican from Alabama. This is him on Breitbart News. This woman, who has been tragically killed and her family has been traumatized as a result of it, was one of my constituents. This illegal immigrant came to this country illegally, claimed asylum, by the way, then they gave him a date for his asylum hearing. He did not show up for his asylum hearing. So as many of these asylum seekers do, because they're gaming the system. And now he has killed an innocent woman, a teacher. It's outrageous. He should have never gotten into this country to begin with, which is why we need border security, a wall, and other things. And we shouldn't have an asylum system that he and others game. Only 20% of asylum seekers get asylum. They know they're not entitled to asylum. They claim it. They know they're going to be released into American society. They don't show up for their hearings like this guy didn't show up. And then they commit an incredibly tragic crime like this one. I've got to tell you, my constituents are outraged. And everybody in America should be outraged about this, because it could be your mother, your sister, your aunt, your daughter that got killed by one of these people. And we've got to put an end to that. Now, I didn't hear anything about this bill on any other network. I heard it on One American News. I didn't see it on CNN. I didn't see it on MSNBC. I didn't see it in the Daily News. I didn't hear it on KYW News Radio. Here's why. This is why the MSN has not covered the story and made the names of the victims and the alleged perpetrator household names. I can guarantee that if the alleged perpetrator had been a white police officer and the victim a person of color, a teacher at a Muslim school, their names would be pouring out of Anderson Cooper's and Chris Cuomo's and Don Lemon's mouths ad nauseum. Mm-hmm. Because the perpetrator, the alleged perpetrator, I'll say alleged, is not white. He's not a law enforcement officer. And he's not an alleged white supremacist. No, none of these. The alleged perpetrator is a person of color and an illegal alien. And as for the catch and release policy, the mainstream media, Bill, has bent themselves over backwards to paint Donald Trump as a hater of people of color and immigrants. Mm-hmm. But this policy is so absolutely convoluted and nonsensical that there should be congressional hearings to revoke this stupid policy. I could give you some more statistics, but time will not allow. So that is the story of Sonia Jones, tragically killed at the age of 49 by an illegal immigrant who was gaming the system using the catch and release policy that's in place, which has to be changed. So I don't know if anybody, we all know who Trayvon Martin is, and the kid who was killed in one of the big incidents, back in 2017? Yeah. Michael Brown. But you're not going to hear the name of Sonia Jones. She's black. You're not going to hear about her name because the alleged perpetrator is not a police officer. He's not a white supremacist. He's not white. He was a person of color. And he was an illegal immigrant. So you're not going to hear about it. Well, let's see if we can get through the rest of this program before I have a heart attack. Okay? Spike Lee. Spike Lee won an Oscar recently, Bill. I don't know if you knew, for Best Adapted Screenplay for Black KKK Klansman. But he gave a speech. And this should say a lot. Bill, you talked about Hollywood a little earlier when we talked about Alyssa Milano, and you had the response to that. Well, this goes right along with that, Bill. Goes right along with that. This is the speech, a very short one, but it says a lot, from Spike Lee, given at the Oscars in receiving his award, his Oscar. The word today is irony. The date, the 24th. The month, February, which also happens to be the shortest month of the year, which also happens to be Black History Month. Mm-hmm. The year 2019. The year 1619. History. Her story. 1619, 2019. 400 years. 400 years our ancestors were stolen from Mother Africa and brought to Jamestown, Virginia, enslaved. Our ancestors worked the land from can't see in the morning to can't see at night. My grandmother, who lived to be 100 years young, who was a Spelman College graduate even though her mother was a slave. My grandmother, who saved 50 years of Social Security checks to put her first grandchild, she called me Spiky Poo. She put me through Morehouse College in New York University grad film. New York University. Before the world tonight, I give praise to our ancestors who have built this country into what it is today, along with the genocide of its native people. We all connect with our ancestors. We will have love and wisdom regained. We will regain our humanity. It will be a powerful moment. The 2020 presidential election is around the corner. Let's all mobilize. Let's all be on the right side of history. Make the moral choice between love versus hate. Let's do the right thing. You know I had to get that in there. So that was Spike Lee's little speech. What do you make of that, Bill?
It's typical of Spike Lee. I would expect nothing else. Knowing what I know about that man and his racially motivated attitude, I'm not surprised at all.
And he was given a very warm round of applause, and he was honored for that.
Sure he was.
Yeah. Now, continuing on a little bit with Spike Lee, I don't remember this, Bill. This is really something. December 8th, 2015, page 1 of the Philadelphia Daily News. That's the cover. The cover, page 1 is the cover, with a shot of then presidential candidate Donald Trump over the headline, quote unquote, the new Fuhrer, gets a brief revival as part of a montage at the beginning of the 8th episode of Lee's new Netflix series, She's Gotta Have It, based on his own 1986 film. Mm-hmm. The episode, Love Don't Pay the Rent, opens on the evening of November 8th, 2016, Election Day, in case you've forgotten, with a montage of front pages and other images and a song from Stu and the Negro Problem, Clown with the Nuclear Code, that begins, a clown had a go at a reality show which 24/7 played. The montage first shows a New York Daily News page 1 declaring, Clown runs for president, and showing an image of Trump altered to include a red nose and clown makeup. So this Daily News headline, 2015, December 8th, the new Fuhrer. Mm-hmm. Now, to say that he's the new Fuhrer, no one can miss the connection to the Fuhrer, Adolf Hitler, mm-hmm. who presided over the extermination of 6 million Jews, among others. To compare Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler, to say that that's irresponsible doesn't even begin to say how horrendous and irresponsible and cowardly that is. It's just, to me, Bill, it's a sign of where we are today.
Yep.
Donald Trump is open game for every MSN outlet out there. And for this headline to be produced, and for Jews to not be outraged. If they were, Bill, I missed it. I didn't see it.
No.
All right. I'm going to move on from that. Everybody's familiar with Jussie Smollett, the Empire actor. The Empire actor who alleged who was the alleged victim of a, as the mainstream media called it, racist, homophobic attack back in, I think it was January. But everyone who heard the story, I shouldn't say everyone, many who saw the story on the first day and heard it, the red flags went up. No, this didn't really happen. But you had people like Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, two people running for the Democratic presidential nomination, come out that day, among many others, and condemned it as a hate crime, a racist crime, a homophobic crime, and it portrayed Donald Trump in the attack as the attackers wearing these MAGA hats, Make America Great Again. Mm-hmm. The story was so ridiculous, and it remains so ridiculous, that, as I said a moment ago, that people knew when it first happened that it really didn't happen. And it looks like he paid someone to do it. But I just want to, the reason I'm bringing this up, Bill, this goes along with where we are in this country right now with regards to quote unquote race relations and the furtherance of propaganda, furthering propaganda of agendas like further mainstreaming sexually deviant practices. So this is Smollett talking to Robin Roberts on Good Morning America. This is before the charges were dropped. I don't have time to get into why they were dropped. He says this to Robin Roberts: "I'm pissed off. It's the attackers, but it's also the attacks," he told Robin Roberts. By attacks, he seems to mean social media posts. Mm-hmm. At first it was the thing of like, listen, if I tell the truth, then that's because it's the truth. Then it became a thing of like, how can you doubt that? How can you not believe that? It's the truth. Then it became a thing of like, it's not necessarily that you don't believe that this is the truth. You don't even want to see the truth. Now, he's referring to people who knew that it was a hoax. All right? He goes on to say this: "It feels like if I had said it was a Muslim or a Mexican or someone black, I feel like the doubters would have supported me much more. Mm-hmm. A lot more. And that says a lot about the place where we are in our country right now. For me, the main thing was the idea that I somehow switched up my story, you know? And that somehow maybe I added a little extra trinket, you know, of the MAGA thing. I didn't need to add anything like that. They called me a faggot. They called me a nigger. There's no which way you can cut it. I don't need some MAGA hat as the cherry on top of some racist sundae." So this punk, Jussie Smollett, I don't know if he conjured up this hoax or someone else put him up to it. I don't know. But there's the agenda right there, Bill. Let's see. What's the takeaway? What's the takeaway of this event, this whole Jussie Smollett thing? An attack by what would have to be white males, which would further demonize white men. Okay, that's where we are today. The victim is black, furthering along the prevailing narrative that blacks are targets for racial injustice from hateful white men. That's the Colin Kaepernick effect. The victim is homosexual, furthering along the prevailing narrative that the LGBTQ culture are targets of hateful white men, and also to further along the LGBTQ mainstreaming agenda. And there's the cherry on the top. The white perpetrators are supporters of a fear and hate-mongering president. You take the whole Jussie Smollett event from the time that it first happened in January to the time that the charges were dropped, 3 weeks ago maybe now. Mm-hmm. For me, the overtones, the overarching issue is the further demonization of white men and the furthering along the agenda of sexual deviant practices, getting them more and more people to believe that they are normal, and if you say anything against that, you are hate-filled. And, again, to denigrate Donald Trump and anybody who would support Donald Trump. That's the takeaway for me from this whole event. Regardless of if he hoaxed it himself or someone else put him up to it, I don't know. I kind of think that it wasn't just him. I believe that someone else with a lot of money, manipulators maybe, that we've been talking about this whole time. Mm-hmm. It's just odd that the charges would be dropped. And even Rahm Emanuel got pissed off that the charges were dropped. So, let's see. I think we're gonna be able to get to everything here, Bill. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna end this whole thing up, Bill. With oh no, I got one more after this. This happened last December. Everybody's hero, LeBron James. You know, he bounces a basketball in shorts, runs around in shorts, and throws it into a metal cylinder. He's a hero to a lot of people for that, I'll tell you. So last December, LeBron James, he has an HBO show called The Shop. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I'm not. I wasn't until I heard this story.
Yeah, I've heard it.
Okay. Here's the article. It's a short article. This is by Ben Golliver. This is from December 21st of 2018. For LeBron James, the fundamental difference between the NBA and the NFL is the level of respect shown to players by the respective leagues and their team owners. The Lakers forward, who in recent years has become an increasingly outspoken advocate for professional athletes on matters of race and politics, took the NFL and its owners to task on the latest episode of The Shop, which aired Friday on HBO, which would have been last December. In the NFL, they got a bunch of old white men owning teams, and they got that slave mentality, James said. Yep. And it's like, this is my team. You do what the F I tell y'all to do, or we get rid of y'all. James, a four-time NBA MVP, made the comments in an extended conversation with his business partner, Maverick Carter, Los Angeles Rams running back Todd Gurley, and the actor-rapper Ice Cube. I'm so appreciative in our league of our commissioner, Adam Silver, James continued. He doesn't mind us having a real feeling and be able to express that. It doesn't even matter if Adam agrees with what we're saying. He at least wants to hear us out. As long as we're doing it in a very educational, nonviolent way, he's absolutely okay with it. The NBA and the NFL have had strikingly different approaches to player activism. In the NBA, James and others have worn T-shirts during warm-ups in recognition of victims of police violence with no repercussions from the league. Now, before I move on, maybe there should be some NBA players who should also wear the names of police officers who have been killed by punks. No. Why don't they do that? Does anybody in the NBA have guts to do that?
Nope.
This is the easiest thing in the world to do right now because of the Colin Kaepernick effect. By contrast, former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick set off years of controversy and debate when he knelt during the national anthem as a means to protest racial injustice. And I'm sure Colin Kaepernick, he really investigated social injustice. He didn't just read some headlines and decide to kneel. I'm sure he did a real in-depth investigation into it. If he has, Bill, I haven't seen it yet. Mm-hmm. The NFL and Commissioner Roger Goodell responded by instituting strict guidelines for player conduct during the anthem. Kaepernick, who has not appeared in an NFL game since the 2016 season, ultimately filed a grievance against the league's owners, alleging they colluded to keep him sidelined as a response to his protest. Now, I didn't get involved in finding out the agreements, but that grievance has been settled. And I don't know what the particulars are of that. Maybe I'll look that up and I'll bring it up in a future broadcast. But you won't hear much from Colin Kaepernick now because that grievance has been settled. The NFL and its owners have faced quote-unquote slave comparisons numerous times over the past decade. In 2011, then Minnesota Vikings running back Adrian Peterson said that the league's labor situation was like modern-day slavery. Now, let's stop for a second. Bill, when you think of slavery, what do you think of? Very simple question.
When I think of slavery?
Yeah. What is it historically known as?
The enslavement of blacks by whites.
Under favorable conditions?
No.
And yet these guys are comparing... I'm sorry?
In chains.
Yes. And yet these guys, like Adrian Peterson, are comparing playing in the NFL, comparing it, saying it's modern-day slavery.
Mm-hmm.
James stressed that he and other NBA players have still encountered resistance, even though they've been careful to take nonviolent approach to their activism. I am very educated about what I believe in. I'm not doing it in a violent way, James said. I'm not knocking on your door saying, listen, I'm kneeling today, and if you don't kneel with me, I'll knock you to F out. But you know, people go crazy when things are done outside the box. People don't know how to react. Now, let me respond to that article. And I think I can get through this pretty quickly. James uses the term old white men. Old white men. Mm-hmm. Now, this statement demonstrates clearly that LeBron James is a bigot. He's a bigot. Contrary to the propaganda brainwashing programs that are in place today, racism and bigotry are not confined to people with white skin. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The picture LeBron James is painting here is that of an extreme situation. He uses language that will get anyone's attention when he and others like Adrian Peterson invoke slavery. James compares the NBA and the NFL. He states that NBA Commissioner Adam Silver gives players the freedom to express themselves, and that NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell and team owners do not, and that NBA players wearing T-shirts with victims of police violence. Well, the NBA is free to do as it pleases, but maybe they should be more discreet when it comes to the free expression of its players during games, including warm-ups,
mm-hmm.
because it pushes away long-time NBA fans like myself. And I'm sure that I'm not alone. I'm sure many others have been turned off by LeBron James' big mouth, including police officers who are constantly accused of racism and bigotry by the likes of LeBron James and Colin Kaepernick. Now, slavery bill has been discussed and examined in every area of life, in politics, educational system, the entertainment industry. It's been described as a horror that was forced on human beings. And for LeBron James and Adrian Peterson and others here to use that word for their griping session is an utter outrage. And what's worse, Bill, is that NFL owners themselves have not yet pushed back against James. That is what really bewilders me. And neither have NFL players themselves, both past and present. And I'm left to wonder, why not? Why not?
Mm-hmm.
If the NFL is in any way, shape, or form comparable to the slavery we're all familiar with, then stop telling us how bad slavery was. Because it doesn't look like these NFL players are living bad lives. And I'd like to know where the black voices whose ancestors were slaves and are aware of the conditions they were subject to. I'm not aware of any response from them to tell LeBron James to shut up, that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. Why have they not come out and told instigators like James and Peterson to educate themselves regarding slavery before opening their ignorant mouths? And I must assume, Bill, that LeBron James isn't too bothered by his friends in the NFL submitting to slave-like conditions. Since I see him going to Rams games, which makes him a damn hypocrite.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's some suggestions I have for LeBron James. LeBron James, start your own professional football league. You can be the commissioner, and you can make all the rules. You can have a league with all black owners. Then maybe when current NFL player contracts expire, they will join the LeBron James Football League. College players can decide to play in your league. They can say no to the NFL draft and go play in the LeBron James League. And then you can let all your players express themselves all they want. Instead of playing the national anthem, you can give the story of a victim of police violence. Because this is America. Instead of bitching and whining, do something about it. You've got all the money you need, LeBron James, and I'm sure you have plenty of investors who would want to end slavery-like conditions in the NFL. It may take some time, but if you really believe what you're bitching about, then take action instead of moaning and groaning on an HBO show and then going to the Rams playoff game. And to those who agree with LeBron James, Bill, if you agree with LeBron James and others like him, then take a stance. Take a stance. Stop watching the NFL. Stop going to NFL games if you agree with LeBron James. Because if you agree with LeBron James and you continue to watch the games and go to the games, and you are supporting the slave-like conditions of the NFL, which would make you, like him, a damn hypocrite. You see, because I'm taking a stand for something I believe in. I don't support the NBA. I no longer watch a league that supports bigots like LeBron James and gives him free rein to indict another professional sports league with baseless claims and irresponsible accusations. So I myself have decided long before the season started, no, actually it was underway, when LeBron James opened his big mouth. I said, that's enough. You reach a breaking point as a sports fan, Bill. For baseball, it was these contracts. Don't care about the Phillies. Don't care about the 76ers. So, people, you agree with LeBron James, stop supporting the NFL. Take a stand. Last segment here, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk a little bit about Black-Jewish relations in the Nation of Islam. I don't know how many of our listeners are familiar with the NOI, the Nation of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Here is an article from a website, www.jewishvirtuallibrary.org, regarding the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam, the NOI, listen carefully to these words, is the oldest black nationalist organization in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you will hear white nationalists. Tomorrow, turn on your TV, you'll hear it 15, 20 times on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
The oldest black nationalist organization in the U.S. has maintained a consistent record of racism and anti-Semitism under the guise of instilling African Americans with a sense of empowerment since its founding in the 1930s. NOI was founded in Detroit in 1930 by Fard Muhammad, who taught his followers that he was Allah personified. Upon Fard's disappearance, later that decade, his disciple Elijah Muhammad took over and promoted the idea that whites were created by an evil black scientist and that blacks are the superior race. See, that's what racism really is, when you believe that your race is superior. Under Elijah Muhammad's leadership, the NOI attracted a sizable following and amassed a substantial financial empire. The group expanded in the 1950s and 1960s when Malcolm X, a charismatic speaker who joined the group in prison, became its spokesperson. He denounced the group in 1964, a year before he was assassinated. Draw a line right there. But by then, NOI's future leader, Louis Farrakhan, had joined. By the time Elijah Muhammad died in 1975, the NOI had a large following across the country. His son, Warith Deen Muhammad, inherited the leadership but steered the organization towards more traditional Islam. In response, Farrakhan formed a separate group to uphold Elijah Muhammad's original separatist beliefs, taking many members and the Nation of Islam name with him. Under the guidance of Farrakhan, NOI has used its programs, institutions, and publications to disseminate its message of hate. Despite this record, the NOI has been given a measure of legitimacy by some political and media figures. Oh, I would say by the majority of political and media figures. Despite formally relinquishing his leadership role in September 2006 due to illness, Farrakhan continues to speak regularly on behalf of his organization at NOI and other events around the country. His public expressions of anti-Semitism have escalated significantly since 2009, during which time he has delivered several speeches and interviews rife with conspiracy theories about Jews and Israel and about Jewish control of government, finance, and entertainment. During these speaking engagements, including his keynote address at the group's 2011 Savior's Day convention, Farrakhan has promoted anti-Semitic charges of Jewish deicide, denied Jewish claim to the word Semite, and charged that blacks, not Jews, are the real children of Israel. He has also repeated many of his past accusations about Jewish involvement in the transatlantic slave trade and exploitation of black labor in the cotton trade. Accusations he has attempted to bolster by promoting multiple anti-Semitic books, including a second volume of the NOI's anti-Semitic 1991 work, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. In his 2018 Savior's Day speech, he said, this is Farrakhan, Jews were responsible for all of this filth and degenerate behavior that Hollywood is putting out, turning men into women and women into men. White folks are going down, and Satan is going down. And Farrakhan, by God's grace, has pulled a cover off that satanic Jew. And I'm here to say your time is up. Your world is through. In summer of 2010, Farrakhan joined with several African American Muslim leaders to form the Coalition of African American Muslims, CAAM. The initiative's first major effort, a September press conference at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., was held to express support for the controversial proposed Islamic Community Center near Ground Zero. So that article is from the Jewish Virtual Library and gives you their perspective on who Louis Farrakhan and a little bit of history of the Nation of Islam. Now I am going to read, and we're going to close up with this, a little bit from the Nation of Islam's official website, noi.org. And this was an excerpt, Bill, from Message to the Black Man in America in 1965 by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And this is in response to what the Muslims want. There are 10 points in this. I'm going to read a couple of them. Point number 4 says this: we want our people in America whose parents or grandparents were descendants from slaves to be allowed to establish a separate state or territory of their own, either on this continent or elsewhere. We believe that our former slave masters are obligated to provide such land and that the area must be fertile and minerally rich. We believe that our former slave masters are obligated to maintain and supply our needs in this separate territory for the next 20 to 25 years until we are able to produce and supply our own needs. Since we cannot get along with them in peace and equality, after giving them 400 years of our sweat and blood, and that would make Spike Lee happy, and receiving in return some of the worst treatment human beings have ever experienced, I don't think he's talking about the NFL there, we believe our contributions to this land and the suffering forced upon us by white America justifies our demand for complete separation in a state or territory of our own. Point number 10. We believe that intermarriage or race mixing should be prohibited. We want the religion of Islam taught without hindrance or suppression. What Muslims believe. 12 points here, Bill. I'll read 4 or 5 of them. We believe in the one God whose proper name is Allah. We believe in the Holy Quran and in the scriptures of all the prophets of God. We believe in the truth of the Bible, but we believe that it has been tampered with and must be reinterpreted so that mankind will not be snared by the falsehoods that have been added to it. That's points number 1, 2, and 3. Point number 7. We believe this is the time in history for the separation of the so-called Negroes and the so-called white Americans. We believe that black man should be freed in name as well as in fact. By this we mean that he should be freed from the names imposed upon him by his former slave masters, names which identify him as being the slave master's slave. We believe that if we are free indeed, we should go in our own people's names, the black people of the earth. Point number 12, and this is the last one, Bill. We believe that Allah, God, appeared in the person of Master W. Fard Muhammad, July 1930, the long-awaited Messiah of the Christians and the Mahdi of the Muslims. We believe further and lastly that Allah is God, and besides Him there is no God, and He will bring about a universal government of peace wherein we can all live in peace together. Now, that was from 1965, Bill. Way back in 1965. None of that took place. But lo and behold, what we have going on within some members of the field of the hopeful Democratic nominees, such as Kamala Harris, they are starting to talk about reparations, Bill. Mm-hmm. This is an article from, I just looked this up a few hours ago. Are you familiar with the National Action Network, Bill?
Yes, I am.
The National Action Network is a not-for-profit is a not-for-profit civil rights organization founded by the Reverend Al Sharpton in New York City, New York, in early 1991. In a 2016 profile, Vanity Fair has called Sharpton arguably the country's most influential civil rights leader. Now, let me see here. Not-for-profit. Let's see. Let me see what they pay here, Mr. According to IRS filings, the organization paid Al Sharpton $241,402 plus personal expenses for 2011. Sharpton's rate of pay remained around the same until 2014, when he was given a 71% raise to $412,644, which included a bonus of $64,400. Now, the organization itself might be a not-for-profit, but let me tell you something. Al Sharpton has been profiting greatly by the civil rights movement. Is very profitable for some people, like Al Sharpton. You want to listen to Al Sharpton? Be my guest. but be aware that he gets paid to do what he does, and he gets paid handsomely. And as I said a moment ago, the National Action Network held a luncheon or something on April 5th in New York City. A slew of Democratic candidates hoping to challenge President Donald Trump for the White House spelled out their views on racial justice Friday in progressive campaign pitches to crowds at Al Sharpton's National Action Network convention. Let me read this. And most of, keep in mind, I just read that, what Muslims want, and most of the 2020 contenders, often prompted by Sharpton himself, also affirmed their support for a bill introduced in Congress that would create a commission to study reparations for African Americans. When I am elected president, I will sign that bill, said Kamala Harris, Democrat from California, told Sharpton to raucous applause from the convention hall crowd. Harris also pledged to double the size of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. Justice means recognizing domestic terrorism, including white nationalist extremism, which Harris said should be considered a national security priority. Bernie Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont and self-described Democratic socialist who is running as a Democrat in 2020, called to repair the racial wealth gap, establish a single-payer healthcare system for all Americans, make public colleges and universities tuition-free, and force large corporations to start paying their fair share. And he has, Sanders did a turnaround. He's now saying that he thinks that the bill should be passed to look into whether reparations should be made. Also in support of that bill, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota. Both of them are Democratic hopefuls. And Cory Booker. Well, let me be accurate. Senator Cory Booker added a note of caution in his speech Friday afternoon, telling the crowd that the conversation around reparations cannot become just a political box-checking exercise. So, that's what's going on in the world today, Bill. Those are the things that I see. I mean, take what I say and do what you will with it. I don't care what you do with it. But I would suggest that you think about all these things that we've said. The times, they are changing, as I think it was Bob Dylan that once sang back in the 1960s. And I just want to end this whole series by saying what I said at the beginning, that certain events that happen, Bill, on the landscape of this world, on the stage of this world, they have to be tied together. If what we're saying, now, we're Christians, we understand that there is a literal devil, and that he literally does have servants, flesh and blood servants here on this earth, that are doing his bidding, ultimately to bring forth his man of lawlessness. If that's true, we believe it is true, then all of these things are interconnected, and they're done for a purpose. They're done for a reason. They are manipulating the masses. They know how to do that. They know how to set race against race, ethnicity against ethnicity, religion against religion, mankind against mankind. They know how to get people to hate each other. They're masters at their craft. And I think I know that that's what we tried to highlight throughout this whole series. There's so much more that we could have brought to the table that time would just not allow us to, but I would just encourage people to stay in touch with us, keep watch on what we do, because as Bill said at the beginning of the program, when things happen that we think
need to be talked about, need to be highlighted and scrutinized and examined, because that doesn't happen in the mainstream media, whether it's allegedly conservative or liberal. You don't really go into in-depth stuff. And even on some of the shows that are on radio, they do a lot of dancing. So keep watch and keep checking in with the different media outlets that we have available to us that Bill takes care of. And when things happen, we're going to jump on it as time allows. And we'll try to. We'll be honest with you, folks. You can disagree with us. That's fine. That's fine. I just see a pattern of what's going on in this world, Bill, and it's getting worse, and it's getting more bold, and it's getting more in your face. I don't think they're worried about it anymore. I don't think they're trying to hide stuff anymore. I think it's going to become more and more. Here's what it is, and we don't care if you see it, and we don't care if Joe and Bill go on the radio and yell about us. It's going to happen. But, the alternative is to remain silent, and I don't see where that helps anybody. So if anybody has any comments or questions to anything they heard during this series, please. We love to get emails. Please email us. We love to engage people in conversation, whether it's people that disagree with us. At the end of the day, if we come to disagreement, then so be it. But at the very least, we want to get people thinking about these things. And if there's any corrections, then correct us. We always said that. So that's my closing argument, Bill.
All right. I just wanted to, before we wrap up, this came to my attention today, Joe, and it went right along with your last point regarding the Nation of Islam and Louis Farrakhan. And, we have a presence on Facebook. And I know a lot of my friends who are on Facebook and who post certain things end up in what's called Facebook jail, where they are silenced for what they write and say. And when I saw this today about the Facebook page of Minister Louis Farrakhan, who has a presence on Facebook, and to my knowledge, Joe, whatever hate he spews is okay.
Wow.
Anything that Minister Louis Farrakhan says will not end him up in Facebook jail. And I just want everyone to listen to this. And if you're a Christian, you're going to be livid when you hear this. If you're a Jew, you are going to be livid when you hear this. I wonder if you are a Muslim, what your reaction is to this. You made the statement a few times today in this broadcast, Joe, about how white males are viewed as the haters today.
Yes.
Everything we do is with hate in our hearts. I want people to listen to Louis Farrakhan here. This is 5 minutes, Joe.
Go ahead.
This is on his Facebook page.
God so loved his people that he gave his only begotten Son.
I don't know if you're speaking, Bill. I can't
whosoever
hear you. I don't know if others can hear you. Hopefully it's just me that
believed in him
You can't hear?
would not
I
perish,
can't hear you, no.
but have everlasting life. God does not love this world. God never sent Jesus to die.
Apparently, it's not coming. It's coming through my headphones, but you could not hear it.
I couldn't hear it. I don't know if that's just me or none of our listeners will be able to hear
probably
it.
Not. And I'm not surprised. But in essence, I'll summarize what his 5 minutes was. That he starts out with John 3:16, and he goes on a rant about how Jesus did not die for the sins of the world. He further goes on that Jesus didn't die on the cross, and still further goes on that the problem with Jesus was that he came 2,000 years too early to exterminate the Jews. And this is a man, Joe, who you described earlier as the disciple of Elijah Muhammad. And wants to take the Nation of Islam back to their separatist beginnings, right?
Right.
So he made that speech on February 17th of this year. And I would
Wow.
encourage everyone to go to Louis Farrakhan's Facebook page and listen to that 5 minutes of hate. Five minutes of spewing nothing but garbage. But yet, he's not silenced in any way. So,
Incredible.
yeah, folks, this is what's going on in the world today. And as Joe said, it's the puppet master pulling the strings
That's right.
to get people to hate one another, to be at enmity with one another. And
That's true.
I hope that we were able to outline that in this 5-part series.
Yeah. Again, I would also encourage people to go and listen to Farrakhan's speech, and I will do that as well. And you're right, Bill. It's another example of, as I mentioned earlier, the mainstream media. In this case, it's social media. Mm-hmm. And, Mark Zuckerberg is this big champion of weeding out hate groups, and yet he allows this hate group, the Nation of Islam. If you don't have a group that, if the Nation of Islam isn't a group that's filled, they don't pretend to hate Jews. To allow them to be on there is disgraceful.
It is.
And that, again, it goes to the double standard of Islam and Christianity. You can have a black nationalist movement, but you can't have a white. Not that I would want a white nationalist movement on there. I don't want that. Mm-hmm. But I don't like the double standard. I don't like the games that these people play. Now that should be a story. That should be a story. That speech that you talked about, Bill, for everybody to see. That should be on CNN. That should be on MSNBC. That should be on Fox News. That should be on One American News. That should be on you name it. And as I said earlier, if you folks out there, you do see it on one of these, send it to Bill. All right, send it. Don't send it to me because I don't know anything about technology. It'll get lost in cyberspace. Send it to Bill, and he'll make me aware of it. Yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And by the way, Bill, the NAACP is generally recognized as a good organization. The Philadelphia chapter of the NAACP has a president by the name of Rodney Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
Rodney Muhammad was a former propaganda minister of Louis Farrakhan in the Nation of Islam back in the 80s and 90s. And I brought the name up many times before in our broadcast of Irv Homer, a talk show host here back in Philadelphia back in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s. And Irv Homer was not afraid to call out the Nation of Islam. Irv, being Jewish himself, was very, very well aware of the hate of the Nation of Islam. And he played a clip one time of Rodney Muhammad himself in one of his speeches at a NOI function, whipping up the crowd, saying, if you see a Jew in a wheelchair and that Jew is near a cliff, you push that Jew off the cliff in the wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
That is your NAACP president, Rodney Muhammad. And every day that I shouldn't say every day, KYW, our local CBS, NBC radio affiliate, whenever a racial issue comes up, they go right to Rodney Muhammad and they want to get his opinion on what's going on. And he's given this air of legitimacy, although he has this past. Now, why is Donald Trump's past constantly brought up against him and other people? But someone like Rodney Muhammad can say something as vile as push a Jew off a cliff in a wheelchair, and that doesn't stick with him?
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to give him legitimacy in the NAACP. And what does that say about the NAACP, that they would have a creep like that as their president in Philadelphia?
Yep.
So like I said, Bill, I mean, there's so many other things that we could have brought to the table, but we just don't have the time to do it. It was an exhaustive and an exhausting 5-part series, and it was very hard to get this 5th one in, but we finally got it in. So, folks, I hope that you'll go back and listen to the other 4 parts and enter into dialogue with us.
Yep.
Let us know what you thought.
Yeah, and to do that, you can send us an email. Our website, www.answersfortheparanormal.org. Our email address is joe@answersfortheparanormal.org and william@answersfortheparanormal.org. Send us your email, a comment, anything you want to talk about regarding this series or anything else that you've heard us say. Please send us communication and we'll be in touch. And so,
yes,
Joe, thanks again. You're right. It's been exhausting, but it's been eye-opening, I hope, for some people.
Me too.
Yeah. And until next time, check out our Facebook page for our next broadcast and where we'll be going next. And thanks again for listening tonight to Answers for the Paranormal, and we'll catch you next time. Joe, good night.